The council chamber of Station Theta 9 hummed with tension. Holographic displays flickered across curved walls, showing the massive creature suspended in an energy matrix 3 levels below. Its crimson scales caught the light like flowing blood, and its eyes, ancient, intelligent eyes, stared at nothing and everything. Administrator Koresh stood at the center of the circular room. His 4 arms moved in patterns as he spoke, a habit of his species when stressed. Around him sat representatives from 12 different worlds, each more different than the last. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like walking crystals that caught and refracted the chamber's light. "We have waited long enough," Koresh said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. 3 years we have kept this creature. 3 years of trying every method known to our science. 3 years of failure. On the display screen, the creature shifted slightly in its glowing prison. It was enormous, 40 feet from snout to tail, with wings that could span twice that length when fully extended. The beings in the chamber had seen many dangerous animals in their careers. This one was different. This one looked back at them with understanding in its eyes, and that made it more frightening than any mindless beast. Dr. Solith clicked her mandibles together nervously. The insectoid scientist had spent more time studying the creature than anyone else in the facility. Her compound eyes could see things others missed. The subtle changes in the creature's body language, the patterns in its behavior that suggested something more than animal instinct. "Administrator, I must protest again," she said, her voice creating harmonics that her translator rendered into standard galactic speech. "My research indicates advanced cognitive function. The specimen shows problem-solving abilities that rival some sentient species. To terminate it without further study would be necessary," Commander Vree interrupted. The reptilian warrior leaned forward, his scaled fist hitting the table with a dull thump. "It attacked Handler Breen yesterday. That makes 3 incidents in 2 months. How many of our people must be injured before you accept the truth? This thing cannot be controlled, or has not been understood." Dr. Solid shot back. Koresh raised 2 of his arms, calling for silence. "We have reviewed Handler Breen's report." The creature grabbed him with its tail and threw him against a barrier. Breen suffered 2 broken ribs and a fractured arm. Only the emergency force fields prevented worse injury. But why did it attack? Dr. Solid persisted. What was Breen doing when the incident occurred? "Does it matter?" Another council member asked. This one was a floating jellyfish-like being that spoke through bioluminescent flashes. "Dangerous is dangerous. We are caretakers of this preserve, not victims in waiting." Up in the observation gallery, hidden in shadows where visitors could watch council proceedings, a small figure pressed closer to the railing. Taeyeon was only 12 years old, small even for a human child. His dark hair fell over his eyes as he leaned forward, desperate to hear every word. He had been on the station for 2 years now, ever since the rescue ship found his escape pod drifting in deep space. The raiders had come without warning. His colony never stood a chance. Farmers and teachers against professional killers. His parents had shoved him into the emergency pod with seconds to spare. He remembered his mother's face through the closing door, her mouth forming words he could not hear over the alarms. His father's hand hitting the launch button. Then nothing but stars and silence for 17 days until the salvage crew picked him up. Station Theta 9 took him in because they had nowhere else to send him. Human colonies were rare in this sector, and Earth was too far away. So Taeyong worked, cleaning corridors, sorting waste, running errands for credits that bought him food, and a small sleeping pod in the station's lower levels. He had discovered the creature 3 months ago while cleaning near the holding areas. A wrong turn, a door left unlocked, and suddenly he was staring at the most magnificent being he had ever seen. The creature hung in a web of blue energy, its scales shifting colors as light played across them. But it was the eyes that caught him. They looked sad. They looked tired. They looked like Taeyong felt every single day. Now, pressing his face against the cold observation glass, he watched the council debate the creature's life. "We put it to a vote," Koresh announced. "All in favor of terminating specimen X7 indicate now." Lights blinked across the chamber. Taeyong counted them, his heart sinking with each illuminated panel. 14 votes. Those opposed, 3 lights. Only 3. The motion carries, Koresh said. His voice carried no emotion, just a flat tone of bureaucratic duty. Specimen X. 7 will be terminated in 3 standard days. This council is adjourned. The representatives began filing out, already talking about other business, other concerns. To them, this was just another item checked off an administrative list. A failed experiment. A dangerous animal that could not be tamed. Taeyong remained in the gallery long after everyone left. Below, the creature turned its head as if sensing his presence. Their eyes met across the distance. A human child and an alien dragon, both alone, both unwanted. That night, Taeyong made a decision that would change everything. The lower levels of Station Theta. 9 were quiet during the sleep cycle. Most of the staff had returned to their quarters, leaving only the hum of life support systems and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment. Taeyong moved through the corridors with practiced silence. 2 years of janitorial work had taught him every camera blind spot, every maintenance shaft, every door that did not lock properly. The creature's holding chamber was massive. Energy projectors lined the walls, creating a cage of pure force that held the dragon suspended in midair. Warning signs covered every surface in languages Taeyong could not read, but he understood the universal symbols. Skull and crossbones, lightning bolts, crossed-out figures of various species. He walked past all of them. The dragon's eye opened slowly. The vertical pupil contracted as it focused on the small human standing far below. Most species who met that golden gaze felt their survival instinct scream at them to run. Taeyong felt something different. He saw recognition in that eye. He saw loneliness that matched his own. "They are going to kill you," Taeyong said quietly. His voice echoed in the empty chamber. 3 days from now. Did you know that? The dragon did not move, but something shifted in its posture. The great head tilted slightly, as if considering the boy's words. "I know what it feels like," Taeyong continued. He took another step closer to the barrier. The energy field crackled, making the hair on his arms stand up. To be alone, to be the only one left. The dragon's second eye opened, both golden, orbs fixed on a small human. "The raiders came so fast," Taeyong said. The words came easier than he expected. He had never told anyone this story. "My mother taught children. My father grew food in the hydroponics domes. They were not fighters. When the alarm started, we ran to the escape pods. But there were not enough. There were never enough." His hands clenched at his sides. "My father pushed me inside. My mother was crying. Dad said something. I could not hear over the alarms. Then the door closed and the pod launched, and I was alone in space. Just me and the stars and 17 days of wondering if anyone would find me before the air ran out." A sound filled the chamber. It was not a roar or a growl. It was deeper than that, something that Taeyong felt in his chest more than heard with his ears. The dragon's scales began to shimmer, and patterns of light flowed across its body like water catching sunlight. "You understand, don't you?" Taeyong whispered. "You know what it is like." The dragon moved for the first time in weeks. Its massive head lowered toward the barrier, slowly, carefully. Taeyong did not run. He raised his hand, palm out, fingers spread, through the crackling blue energy that separated them, through the technology designed to keep them apart. Something passed between boy and dragon. The dragon's snout stopped just on the other side of the field from Taeyang's hand. The scales were so close Taeyong could see every detail. The way they overlapped like armor, the colors that shifted from crimson to gold to copper. Heat radiated through the barrier, warm like summer sun on skin. Then the dragon's scales blazed with light. Patterns flowed and twisted, forming shapes that almost looked like writing. Taeyong could not read them, but somehow he understood. Not words exactly, but feelings. Emotions that crashed over him like waves. Grief, loss, loneliness, and underneath it all, a desperate, aching hope. Tears ran down Taeyang's face. "You are not just an animal," he said. "You are a person. They do not see it, but I do." The dragon's patterns pulsed brighter. More feelings came through: gratitude, recognition, connection. Something that felt like a name, though not in any language Taeyong knew. It meant something like last ember of a dying sky or final light of fallen world. It was a name that carried sadness and strength in equal measure. Ember, Taeyong said, try to capture at least part of that meaning. I will call you Ember. The dragon's eyes half closed, and the patterns on his scales formed something that looked almost like a smile. Dr. Solith found them an hour later. The insectoid scientist had been in her laboratory, reviewing the day's sensor data before sleep, when she noticed something impossible. The stress indicators for specimen X7 had flatlined, not the flat line of death, but the flat line of perfect calm. In 3 years, the readings had never dropped below 60%. Now they showed 0. She had run to the holding chamber, expecting equipment failure. Instead, she found a human child with his hand pressed against a barrier, and the dragon with his head lowered in a posture she had never seen before. Peaceful, trusting, connected. How did you do this? Solith asked quietly, afraid to break whatever spell had been cast. Taeyong turned. He expected anger, punishment, maybe ejection from the station. Instead, he saw wonder on the alien scientist's face. I just talked to him, Taeyong said, like he was real. Him. Solith moved closer, her compound eyes taking in every detail. You have determined gender? He told me. Taeyong touched his chest. Not with words. But I know. His name is Ember. Solitha's mandibles trembled with excitement. Empathic communication. His species must bond emotionally. She spun toward Taeyong. Every handler used dominance conditioning, clinical detachment, standard training protocols. Of course it failed. He was not being aggressive. He was being defensive, alone, unable to form the connections his species requires to thrive. Can you stop them from killing him? Taeyong asked. Solith was quiet for a long moment. There's an old preserve law. Last chance rehabilitation. If someone can prove they can safely interact with a specimen, the execution can be delayed. But she looked at Taeyong with all the seriousness her alien features could convey. You would have to enter the cage. No barriers. No protection. If he attacks, both of you will be terminated immediately. Taeyong looked at Ember. The dragon's golden eyes held his gaze steadily. Through whatever connection they had formed, Taeyong felt confidence, determination, and something that might have been affection. He will not attack, Taeyong said simply. How can you be certain? Because we are the same. Both alone. Both the last of something. Both trying to survive in a place that does not understand us. Taeyong's voice grew stronger. He saved my life just by being here. By letting me know I am not the only one who hurts. Now I am going to save his. Sala studied the boy for a long time. Finally, she clicked her mandibles in what might have been a sigh. Then we petition the council tomorrow, and we pray to whatever gods are listening that you are right. Taeyong woke in white light. Everything was too bright, too clean, too quiet. The medical bay. His throat felt like someone had poured acid down it, and every breath sent sharp pains through his chest. Easy. Dr. Solita's voice came from somewhere to his left. Her translator made the clicks and whistles of her natural speech into words he could understand. The gas was toxic to your biology. You nearly died. Memory crashed back. The cage. The test. Ember protecting him. Ember? Taeyong croaked. Trying to sit up, Solita's mandibles drooped. A gesture Taeyong had learned meant sadness. He is alive. But the gas. He used all his strength protecting you. He breathed in so much while shielding you. He is in a coma state now. We cannot wake him. Taeyong ripped the medical sensors off his arms and chest. Alarms beeped as the monitoring equipment lost connection. 2 security guards moved toward him, but Solith waved them back with one of her limbs. Let him go, she said quietly. Taeyong's legs shook as he walked. His body wanted to collapse, but he forced himself forward through the corridors. Staff members stopped and stared at the human child in a medical gown, stumbling toward the holding chambers like a ghost. No one tried to stop him. The holding chamber felt different now. Colder, emptier. Ember lay on the floor instead of suspended in the energy field. Without the barrier, Taeyong could see how truly massive the dragon was. One of Ember's wings stretched across half the chamber. His scales, usually brilliant crimson and gold, had faded to dull gray. "No," Taeyong whispered. He walked forward and knelt beside Ember's head. The dragon's breathing was so shallow that Taeyong had to put his hand on Ember's snout to feel it. "No, you do not get to leave me. Not now. Not after everything." Ember did not respond. His eyes stayed closed. The patterns of light that usually danced across his scales were dark and lifeless. Dr. Solith entered the chamber behind him. She moved quietly for someone with 6 legs. "Taeyong, you must understand. He is not dying from the gas. Our medical team has cleared the toxins from his system. He is dying from heartbreak." "What?" Taeyong looked up at her. "His species bonds deeply," Solid explained. She sat down beside the boy, which was unusual for her. Scientists usually stood when giving reports. "We have learned much in the past 2 days. Ember's kind cannot survive alone. They need emotional connection, the way you need food and water. For 3 years, he had nothing. Then he found you. He felt hope for the first time since his capture. And now," her mandibles clicked sadly, "now he faces captivity again. Even with you here, he knows he will spend his life in a cage. His body is giving up." "Then we have to free him," Taeyong said. "The council will never agree. You saw how close the vote was just to let you try the bonding. They will not release a creature they consider dangerous." "Then I will make them agree." Taeyong stood up. His legs still shook, but his voice was steady. "How do I speak to the full Galactic Council?" Solitha's compound eyes widened. "Taeyong, that is, the full council only meets for matters of extreme importance. Wars, trade agreements between multiple systems. They do not convene for one dragon and one human child." Taeyong finished for her. "Then we will make them understand this is important. You said yourself, Ember's species needs bonds. What if there are others like him? Other creatures you call untamable, who just need understanding instead of control? This is bigger than just us." Solith was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood. "I will submit the request. I cannot promise they will accept." "They will," Taeyong said. He looked down at Ember's still form. "Because if they do not, everyone will watch a dragon die on their holoscreens. They will see that their great galactic preserve kills creatures it does not understand. They will have to explain why a 12-year-old human child cares more about life than all their laws and protocols." 3 days later, Taeyong stood in the great council chamber. He had seen pictures of it before, but pictures did not capture the scale. The chamber was large enough to hold a small city. Representatives from 47 different species sat in tiered rows that rose up into shadows. Each had a holographic display, and each display showed Taeyong's small human form standing at the speaker's platform. Billions watched across the galaxy. This was unprecedented. A child addressing the full council. But Solith had been clever. She had leaked the story to news networks. By the time the council convened, the entire galaxy knew about the human boy and the dying dragon. Public pressure had forced them to hear him. Administrator Koresh spoke first, his 4 arms gesturing at official screens. "This is highly irregular. The council does not typically hear from children?" Taeyong interrupted. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "Or from humans?" Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. One did not interrupt an administrator, especially not if one was a nobody from a destroyed colony. Taeyong did not care about protocol. "I am here to ask for Ember's freedom. And mine. You call him Specimen X7. You call him untamable, dangerous, broken. But he is none of those things. He is grieving. He is lonely. And he has been screaming for help in a language none of you tried to learn. The creature is dangerous." Commander Vree snapped from his seat. "It requires containment for public safety. He requires understanding." Taeyong's voice cracked with emotion. "You used fear and dominance and wondered why he fought back. You treated him like a thing instead of a person. My people, humans, we have an old saying, if you love something, set it free. But you do not love your specimens. You collect them like objects. like trophies for your preserve. A representative from the crystalline species stood, its body chiming as it moved. This is outrageous. A primitive species lecturing us on... Primitive? Taeyong cut in. You call us primitive, but you cannot understand the most basic truth. Every thinking being deserves to choose their own path. Ember chose to save me when Commander Vria's sabotage released that gas. Now I choose to save him. Let us go, or you are no better than the raiders who destroyed my colony. They took without asking to. They decided other lives did not matter. Silence fell across the chamber. Taeyang's words hung in the air, broadcast to billions of viewers across known space. Then the chamber's dome shattered. Ember crashed through the transparent ceiling in an explosion of breaking material and emergency alarms. The dragon should not have been able to fly. He had been in a coma just hours ago. But somehow, hearing Taeyang's voice, feeling the desperation through their bond, Ember had woken. The dragon was weak. His flight was unsteady. But he landed beside Taeyong at the speaker's platform, lowered his massive head, and his scales blazed with bioluminescent patterns that every screen in the chamber displayed. The patterns formed words in multiple languages, translated by the chamber systems. He, save, me, I choose, him. The galaxy watched the dragon choose a human, watched a bond that defied their protocols and procedures and clinical detachment. Administrator Koresh looked around at the chaos, at the broken dome, at the boy and dragon standing together. The cargo ship was old, patched, and barely space-worthy. It was all they could afford with the small grant the council had given them. More would make them leave quickly than out of any real generosity. Taeyong ran his hand along the worn control panel and smiled. The ship had seen better days, but it was theirs. He christened her the Wild Sky and set course for frontier regions where questions were rarely asked. Ember flew alongside, his scales brilliant again. The dull gray had been replaced by cascading colors, crimson and gold and copper that caught the light of distant stars. For the first time in years, the dragon sang. Pulses of bioluminescent joy rippled across his body, lighting up the void of space like a living aurora. Through their bond, Taeyong felt Ember's happiness as if it were his own. Freedom tasted like starlight and possibility. We did it, Taeyong whispered to himself in the cockpit. We actually did it. But freedom brought new challenges. They needed fuel, food, and supplies. The frontier stations were rough places where smugglers and miners gathered, where galactic law was more suggestion than rule. Taeyong was just a boy with a dragon, and many saw them as easy targets. The first station they docked at, a grizzled trader tried to cheat them on fuel prices. Ember had simply looked at the trader through the docking port window, and the price suddenly became very reasonable. Word spread quickly after that. Don't mess with a human kid and his dragon. As they traveled, something unexpected began to happen. News of their story had spread across the galaxy faster than they had anticipated. Young beings on dozens of worlds had watched the council broadcast. They had seen a human child stand up to the most powerful government in known space. They had seen a dragon choose freedom and friendship over captivity. The story resonated in ways Taeyong had never imagined. On a mining colony called Helio Station, a young human girl named Minji watched the broadcast 5 times. She worked in the station's xenobiology lab, caring for creatures that others had given up on. There was one in particular, a massive creature with crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbows. The scientists called it aggressive and unstable. Minji saw something else in its multifaceted eyes. She saw loneliness. Maybe I can try, Minji whispered to herself, remembering how Taeyong had simply talked to Ember like a person. Like he did. She started staying late after her shifts, speaking softly to the crystal creature, sharing her own stories of loss and hope. And slowly, incredibly, the creature began to respond. Its colors shifted in patterns that almost seemed like language. Across the galaxy, similar stories began to emerge. A boy named Juno on a research vessel formed a connection with a telepathic entity from the void between stars. The creature had been contained in magnetic fields, studied but never understood. Juno simply sat beside a containment chamber and thought peaceful thoughts, projecting kindness instead of fear. The entity responded. And for the first time, scientists realized they had been trying to communicate all along. On dozens of worlds, beings who worked with so-called untamable creatures began to question the old methods. What if dominance was a problem? What if these creatures needed understanding instead of control? A movement began. Activists called it the empathy protocols. They demanded reform in how the galaxy treated captured beings. They shared stories of successful bonds, of creatures thriving when given respect instead of restraint. But not everyone was inspired by the changes. Taeyong first learned of the danger when the Wild Skies communication system crackled to life. Dr. Salata's face appeared on the small screen, her mandibles clicking with agitation. Taeyong, you need to hear this. We have intercepted communications. Commander Vree has not accepted the Council's decision. He is convincing others that human bonding with powerful creatures is dangerous, that you will create an army, that emotional connections make beings unpredictable and therefore threatening. That is ridiculous, Taeyong said. We just want to be left alone. I know, but Vree has hired mercenaries. They are hunting you, and there is more. Salata's image flickered. We have discovered a list. 23 creatures across the galaxy, all scheduled for termination in the coming months. All deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable, too costly to maintain. Vree wants them destroyed before anyone else can attempt what you did with Ember. Taeyong felt his stomach drop. Through his bond, Ember sensed his distress and sent waves of comfort and determination. We have to save them, Taeyong said. Taeyong, you are one boy and one dragon. You cannot. Then we find others who will help. Taeyong's hands moved across the controls, pulling up star charts. You said people are trying to bond with creatures on other worlds. We find them. We work together. We save as many as we can. It is dangerous. Vree will come after you with everything he has. He is already coming after us. Taeyong looked out at Ember, flying free in the void. We did not escape just to hide. If there are others like Ember who need help, we help them. That is what family does. The ambush came 3 weeks later in the Cerulean Belt, an asteroid field far from any jurisdiction. 6 mercenary ships dropped out of hyperspace with weapons charged and ready. Surrender the specimen, a harsh voice broadcast across all channels. Commander Vree sends his regards. You have 10 seconds to comply before we open fire. Taeyong's hands flew across the Wild Skies controls. The old ship was slow and poorly armed, no match for professional mercenaries. But Taeyong had spent his childhood listening to his father's stories about Earth's history, about how smaller forces defeated larger ones through cunning instead of strength. Ember, pattern theta, Taeyong shouted. The dragon understood instantly. While the Wild Sky dove between asteroids, using the massive rocks as cover, Ember became a crimson blur of speed and precision. He did not destroy the mercenary ships. Instead, he disabled them with surgical strikes. His claws tore through weapons arrays without breaching hulls. His control bursts of flame melted targeting sensors without killing the crews inside. Taeyong piloted the Wild Sky in perfect synchronization with Ember's attacks. They moved like one being split between ship and dragon, anticipating each other's actions before they happened. When a mercenary tried to flank Ember, Taeyong was already there with the ship's single laser cannon. When 2 ships tried to box in the Wild Sky, Ember crashed between them, forcing them apart. Within minutes, all 6 ships drifted helplessly in the asteroid field, their systems disabled but their crews unharmed. Taeyong broadcast on the emergency channel. We showed you mercy. Remember that when you tell Commander Vree what happened here. On the flagship, Taeyong found what he was looking for. Data crystals containing Vree's plans. His hand shook as he read through the files. 23 creatures, each one considered too dangerous to live. Scheduled terminations over the next 6 months. Salith, are you seeing this? Taeyong asked into his communicator. The scientist's hologram appeared, reviewing the same data. This is worse than we thought. Vree is not just targeting individuals. He wants to eliminate any creature that might form the kind of bond you have with Ember. He is afraid of what it means for the old order. Then we have to move fast. Taeyong looked at the list of names and locations. 23 lives hanging in the balance. We save them all. How? Solith asked. Even with Ember, you cannot fight entire facilities. We do not fight. We teach. Taeyong pulled up communication channels, ways to reach the activists who have been following their story. We find people willing to try bonding with these creatures. We show them what is possible, and we free them before Vria's kill orders are carried out. The first rescue was clumsy and dangerous. The second was slightly better. By the fifth, they had developed a system. Taeyong and Ember would arrive at a facility. They would find someone, usually young, usually considered low-ranking, who showed empathy toward a condemned creature. They would teach that person what Taeyong had learned. Approach with respect, communicate with patience, offer friendship instead of dominance. More joined their cause. Minji and her crystal creature, who she named Prism. Juno and his void swimmer. Others whose names and stories spread across the frontier like wildfire. They were not an army. They were something stranger and more powerful, a family built on understanding instead of fear. But Commander Vri was watching their every move, and he was planning something that would force them to face him directly, one final time. The trap was elegant in its cruelty. Dr. Solita's distress beacon led them to Station Omega-7, a decommissioned facility at the edge of explored space. The station had been abandoned for years, left adrift in the darkness between stars. Now someone had reactivated its power systems just enough to send out a signal. It is obviously a trap, Minji warned over the comm channel. Her crystalline partner, Prism, chimed agreement in musical tones that the translator rendered as caution and danger. I know, Taeyong replied. His hands rested on the wild sky's controls, but he did not change course. But she is family. We do not leave family behind. Ember's thoughts flooded through their bond. Agreement, determination, and underneath it all, readiness for whatever came next. Juno's voice crackled through the static. Then we go in together. All of us. Around the wild sky, a dozen other ships appeared from various approach vectors. Each carried someone who had bonded with a creature of the galaxy, once called Untamable. Minji and Prism. Juno and his void swimmer named Echo. A young alien named Doyen who connected with a creature of living shadow. Hyojin and her partner, a being made of pure energy that danced between forms. They were not soldiers. Most were barely adults. But they were family, and family protected its own. The station's docking bay was cold and dark. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows across walls covered in rust and decay. Taeyang's breath fogged in the freezing air as he stepped off the wild sky. Ember stayed close, his massive form providing warmth. They found Commander Vri in the central chamber, and the sight made Taeyang's blood run cold. Dr. Solith was trapped behind an energy barrier, her 6 legs bound by magnetic restraints. But that was not the worst part. Around the chamber, Vri had positioned 12 heavy weapons, all aimed inward. One wrong move, and everyone in the room would die. The human boy and his pet, Vri said, his reptilian features twisted into something that might have been a smile. You are predictable. I knew you would come if I took something precious from you. Let her go, Taeyong said. His voice was steady despite his fear. This is between you and me. Is it? Vri circled them slowly. I am offering you a choice. The dragon submits to restraints. Real restraints. The kind that will keep it controlled forever. Or the doctor dies. Prove your bond is real. Make it obey you. Taeyong felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Anger would not help. Ember does not obey me, and I do not obey him. That is not how this works. Then she dies. Vri moved his hand toward a control panel. Taeyong turned to Ember. Through their bond, he sent everything he felt, love, gratitude, hope, and goodbye. Out loud, he said, Go. Save yourself. You do not have to die for me. Ember's response came through their connection, with absolute clarity. Images and emotions that meant never leave family. Stay together. Face everything together. The dragon moved to stand beside Taeyong, his scales blazing with defiant light. You still do not understand, Taeyong said to Vri. This is not about control. It never was. Ember stays because he chooses to, not because he must. That is the difference between your way and ours. Touching, Vree sneered, and pointless. Before he could activate the weapons, the chamber filled with newcomers. Minji and Prism descended through a ventilation shaft in the ceiling. Juno and Echo phased through the walls, the Void Swimmer's natural ability to move between dimensions. 24 other bonded pairs arrived through routes Vree had not considered, because he did not understand how deeply their connections ran. They could feel each other across distances, coordinate without words. The chamber became crowded with beings of immense power. Creatures that could tear through metal, burn with fire, freeze with cold, or simply crush with raw strength. They surrounded Vree, and yet none of them attacked. They simply stood witness, waiting peacefully. Vree looked around at beings who could destroy him in seconds. His hand moved away from the weapons panel. You could kill me. All of you. Why do you not attack? Because we learned something you never could, Taeyong said quietly. Mercy, respect, love. Ember taught me that protecting family does not mean destroying enemies. It means showing them a better way. Dr. Solita's voice came from behind the barrier. Commander, I have studied violent species for 30 years. Do you know what I learned? Violence comes from fear. Fear comes from misunderstanding. You were never afraid of these creatures. You were afraid of what it meant if they could not be controlled. Afraid that connection might be more powerful than dominance. Vria's crest slowly lowered. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his features. I was trying to protect the galaxy. From what? Juno asked. From friendship? From beings choosing to help each other? From chaos, Vree said, but his voice had lost its certainty. From unpredictability. From change. Change is not the enemy, Minji said gently. Fear of change is. The weapon stayed silent. The creature stood peaceful. And slowly, Commander Vree began to understand what he had been fighting against all along. Not danger, but hope. The aftermath came swiftly. The Galactic Council, watching everything through the station's reactivated cameras, passed the empathy protocols by a landslide vote. Preserves across the galaxy began transforming from prisons to true sanctuaries. Conditioning gave way to connection. Force gave way to understanding. Humans, once dismissed as primitive and emotional, were offered a new role. They became bond speakers, mediators between species, especially with creatures others deemed too dangerous or too different. It turned out that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their capacity for empathy. Commander Vree retired from his position. Some said he went to a quiet colony world to contemplate what he had learned. Others whispered that he had been seen at a sanctuary, sitting quietly beside a creature others called Untamable, trying to understand what he had missed his entire career. 5 years passed. The untamed sky broke through Earth's atmosphere, followed by a squadron of bonded pairs. 17-year-old Taeyong stood at the viewport, his hand resting on Ember's snout as the dragon's head poked through the cargo bay. Ember was larger now, more magnificent than ever, his scales rippling with colors that Earth had never seen. Do you think anyone has left? Taeyong asked. His colony had been destroyed 7 years ago. Earth was far away, expensive to reach. He had no way of knowing if humanity's homeworld had survived the raider attacks that plagued the frontier. Ember's scales pulsed with hope and encouragement. Through their bond came a feeling that translated roughly to home. Together, free. Below them, blue oceans sparkled in sunlight. Green continents stretched endlessly. And in the ruins of what had once been a colony settlement, lights flickered, small but steady. Signs of survivors. Signs of humanity enduring despite everything the galaxy had thrown at them. Taeyong smiled, remembering his father's last words 7 years ago as the escape pod doors closed. Stay wild. Stay free. He had stayed wild. He had stayed free. And he had taught the galaxy to do the same. As they descended, Ember sang. Bioluminescent patterns rippled across his scales in waves of joy and triumph. The song was visible from the ground, a cascade of colors painting the sky like a living aurora. Other creatures joined the song, each adding their own unique voice. Prism chimed in crystalline harmonics. Echo's void song created impossible colors that should not exist in normal space. The shadow creature wove darkness into beauty. On the ground, survivors emerged from shelters to watch the impossible sight. Dragons and crystals and beings of pure energy fly in formation with battered ships. And leading them all, a human boy and a crimson dragon who had proven that understanding was stronger than force, that love was more powerful than fear. The untamed sky landed gently in a clearing. Taeyong stepped out onto Earth soil for the first time in 7 years. Ember landed beside him, folding his massive wings with careful precision. An elderly woman approached slowly. She wore the patched clothes of a survivor, her face lined with years of hardship, but her eyes were bright with wonder. "We saw the broadcasts," she said. "Even out here, cut off from most of the galaxy, we heard about the boy and the dragon. We thought it was a legend, a story too good to be true." Taeyong smiled. Not a legend, just a family. Behind him, the other bonded pairs disembarked from their ships. Humans and aliens and creatures of every description, all connected by bonds of choice and respect and love. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You gave us hope. When the raiders came, when we thought humanity was finished, we held on to your story. If a boy could save a dragon, maybe we could save ourselves." Ember lowered his head, and his scales blazed with a message that everyone could read. Home. Together. Free. The galaxy had changed. The Untamable had been tamed not through force, but through friendship. And in the process, everyone had learned what it truly meant to be free. Taeyong looked up at the sky, at the stars that had been his prison, and then his path to something greater. Somewhere up there, his parents were watching. He hoped they were proud. He had stayed wild. He had stayed free. And he had helped countless others do the same. The story was complete. But it was also just beginning.